Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're looking at something huge, almost like a massive collision course set for 2025.
Yeah, it really feels like that.
We've got this incredible speed of AI development, new digital spaces like the metaverse popping up, digital ID systems rolling out.
And all slamming right into this incredibly messy, fragmented, global regulatory picture.
Exactly. The sources we've pulled together really map out just how high stakes this battlefield is becoming.
Right. So our mission today really is to cut through some of that complexity for you. We want to make sense of this legal patchwork, especially the global power plays coming out of Europe with AI and content rules.
And also dig into the deeper risks, right? This whole idea of surveillance capitalism operating in these new digital worlds.
Definitely. And how governments are stepping in, trying to control data, information flows, even digital identity itself. There's a lot to unpack.
So we'll be diving into the EU's approach, California's enforcement actions, and maybe touch on some of those bigger, almost philosophical challenges of digital life today.
Let's jump in. Maybe start with the regulatory side. Europe's really leading the charge with the EU AI Act.
The first big comprehensive law for AI, right?
That's it. And the core idea is this risk-based framework. They've basically sorted AI into 4 levels: unacceptable, high, limited, and minimal risk.
Okay, and the rules get tougher the higher the risk.
Precisely. So for those high-risk systems, think AI and critical infrastructure, hiring, maybe medical devices, the obligations are intense.
What does that look like? More paperwork.
Much more than paperwork. We're talking serious pre-market checks, conformity assessments, really detailed technical documents that regulators can inspect.
Okay.
And they have to be registered in a public EU database before they're used. But it's not just the specific applications. They're also regulating the underlying tech.
The foundational models, like the big LLMs.
Exactly. General purpose AI, or GPAI. If these models get big enough, hit certain scale thresholds, they face a whole raft of new rules around transparency, copyright, documentation. It's a big deal.
So Europe's setting a global standard, essentially. Meanwhile, back in the U.S., it's still the Wild West.
Well, maybe not the Wild West, but definitely fragmented. We're expecting maybe 20 states to have their own comprehensive privacy laws by the end of 2025. Think Delaware, Iowa, Maryland, Minnesota, New Jersey joining the mix.
20 different state laws. I mean, that sounds like a compliance nightmare for any business operating across state lines. Does that complexity just get passed on to us, the consumers? Does it cancel out the benefit?
It definitely creates headaches for businesses, no doubt. But, these state laws are pushing boundaries where federal action has stalled. There is some common ground emerging, though.
Like what?
The big one is data protection impact assessments, DPIAs. More and more states are requiring these for anything considered high-risk data processing.
And the definition of what counts as sensitive data is getting wider, too, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's moving way beyond just, say, financial or health records. Newer laws, like in Maryland, Delaware, New Jersey, are adding things like national origin or transgender and non-binary status.
That's significant.
It is. And Maryland's definition of consumer health data is particularly strong. It covers reproductive care, gender-affirming care info, and puts really tight limits on sharing that data. Basically, you can only process it if it's absolutely essential for a service the consumer explicitly asked for. That's a major shift.
Okay, let's pivot to California. They've had their law, the CCPA, for a while. What are the regulators focusing on there?
Consistency seems to be the theme. They keep hitting companies for technical issues and what they call dark patterns.
Dark patterns, like tricking users?
Kind of. Making things deliberately confusing. The Healthline case is a good example. Regulators said their cookie banner was deceptive, plus their opt-out tools just didn't work properly. Honda and Todd Snyder got flagged too, basically for bad website design that made opting out way harder than it needed to be.
So friction by design.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Another big one is ignoring global privacy control signals, the GPC browser setting. Companies are still getting caught not respecting that universal opt-out.
Okay, standard compliance stuff, anything. Newer. More surprising.
Yes, actually. The most interesting thing, I think, came out of that Healthline case again. It was a violation of purpose limitation.
Purpose limitation.
Yeah. Healthline was apparently sharing the titles of articles. People read things like Living with Crohn's Disease with advertisers.
Wow. So using your reading habits on sensitive health topics to target ads.
Exactly. The state argued that sharing went way beyond what a consumer would reasonably expect, even if it was technically disclosed somewhere deep in a privacy policy. it suggested a medical condition.
That feels deeply uncomfortable. It shows California is looking beyond just checkbox compliance, doesn't it? They're looking at the actual impact on trust.
That seems to be the direction. It's about reasonable expectations. Interestingly, though, California's new rules on automated decision-making, ADMT, ended up being narrower than first proposed.
How so?
They're focusing mainly on AI that substantially replaces human decision-making in really significant areas. Jobs, loans, healthcare access, things with major consequences.
So targeting the impact again, not just the use of AI itself.
Right.
It's just such a complex web for businesses dealing with PII, personally identifiable information, across all these places. We should probably mention for businesses trying to untangle this, resources like pi.compliancehub.wiki are invaluable for navigating these jurisdictional mazes and the growing scrutiny. Okay, so that's the regulatory mess. Let's talk about the why. Why is all this data handling so contentious?
Well, the core concept really comes from Shoshana Zuboff. She calls it surveillance capitalism.
Right, I've heard the term. What's the gist?
The gist is it's an economic system built on grabbing personal data. She calls it behavioral surplus, and using it not just to predict, but ultimately to shape our behavior for profit.
So our data becomes the raw material.
Exactly, the new means of production. And it creates this massive imbalance of knowledge and power between the companies collecting the data and us, the users.
And something like the metaverse just puts this on steroids, presumably, with all the sensors, eye tracking, microphones.
Absolutely turbocharges it. The sheer volume and intimacy of data collected in potential metaverse environments dwarf what we see on the current web. And this leads to some pretty serious ethical problems, drawing on critiques from, well, various traditions.
Okay, can we break those down simply?
Sure. Think of it in three ways. First, alienation. Your data, something you produce, gets taken and used against your interests, like manipulative targeted ads making you buy things you don't need.
Okay, makes sense.
Second, exploitation. Companies profit enormously from the data you generate just by using their services, your clicks, your posts, your attention. It's like digital free labor, but you don't really get paid fairly for the value you create.
Right, we get the free service, they get the valuable data.
And third, perhaps most critical, is domination. Because they know so much more about you than you know about them and control the data flows, they gain this power to interfere with your choices, subtly or overtly, whenever they want. It undermines your autonomy.
That control aspect, it leads us right into the censorship debate, doesn't it? Especially with the EU's Digital Services Act, the DSA.
It really does. The DSA forces the really big online platforms, the VLOPs, with over 45 million EU users to tackle systemic risks.
And systemic risks sounds pretty broad.
It is extremely broad
And
controversial. It covers things like misleading or deceptive content, disinformation, hate speech.
Yes.
But here's the kicker. It explicitly targets content that is perfectly legal, but is just deemed, well, harmful or undesirable by regulators or the platforms themselves.
legal but harmful. That's a tricky line. How do they enforce that?
With massive potential fines up to 6% of global annual revenue, the financial pressure is immense.
6% of global, wow.
Yeah. So platforms have a huge incentive to just remove content flagged by government-approved trusted flaggers
Right.
rather than fight it and risk those penalties. It encourages over-removal.
And this affects users outside the EU too.
Absolutely. Because these big U.S. platforms usually have one global set of terms of service, the DSA effectively forces them to apply EU content standards worldwide. It exports EU speech norms to Americans and everyone else.
Have we seen examples of this yet? Content being flagged?
We have. Reports mention things like questioning the efficiency of electric cars in Poland, or even satirical posts about immigration in France being targeted for removal or labeling.
Just for questioning policy or making jokes?
Under these broad disinformation or harmful content categories, yes. When you compel global platforms to police vague concepts like misleading content under threat of huge fines, you inevitably end up chilling legitimate speech. It's a form of global censorship pressure.
It's fascinating how these corporate and state powers are constantly reshaping basic ideas like free expression and, well, privacy itself.
And understanding those core principles like privacy, self-determination, user control over their own information is crucial right now. For anyone wanting deeper analysis on this, www.myprivacy.blog does some really insightful work tracking how these concepts are evolving.
Okay, so we've got AI regulation, content moderation. Let's talk about the ultimate data point, identity. There's a big push for national digital ID systems globally.
A very big push, often linked to biometric data, fingerprints, facial scans, iris scans, and frequently aiming for centralized, sometimes even mandatory systems.
That sounds risky. Centralizing everyone's biometrics.
Immensely risky. Human rights groups, cybersecurity experts, they all raise red flags. A centralized biometric database is a hacker's dream, a single point of failure for the most sensitive data imaginable.
And you can't just reset your fingerprint like a password.
Exactly. If it leaks, it's potentially compromised forever. You might be, as one source put it, unable to restore a pristine identity. That's why the strong recommendation from experts is always, enrollment must be voluntary.
Keep it opt-in.
Yes, and governments should actively avoid creating these huge central biometric honeypots.
Are there real-world examples of where this has gone wrong or shown the risks?
Definitely. India's Aadhaar system is often brought up. While technically voluntary at first, it quickly became almost essential for accessing basic services, making it sort of coercive.
And the risk.
The big one cited is surveillance risk. Every time Aadhaar is used for authentication, it creates a log. Analyzing those logs over time allows for incredibly detailed profiling of people's movements, activities, interactions. Pervasive surveillance potential.
Okay, so that's one model. Any others? Maybe more secure ones.
Estonia is often held up as a more sophisticated example. They use public key cryptography, store key data on secure chips, not just biometrics in a central pod. It's used for digital signatures, secure logins.
That's better.
It is generally considered much better. But even the Estonian system had vulnerabilities discovered that required urgent fixes. It showed significant risks were still present. It proves no system is totally foolproof.
So if centralized is risky, and even sophisticated systems have flaws, are there other ways to handle digital identity?
There are emerging alternatives people are excited about.
Yeah.
Things like self-sovereign identity or SSI.
Self-sovereign, meaning the user is in control.
That's the core idea. Often using technologies like blockchain, the goal is to decentralize identity data. You'd hold your own identity credentials in a secure digital wallet on your device and only share specific pieces when necessary, with your explicit consent.
Giving control back to the individual sounds great. What's the catch?
The catch is often regulation, ironically, especially things like GDPR in Europe.
How so?
Well, GDPR includes the right to erasure, the right to have your personal data deleted. But blockchain, by its very nature, is designed to be immutable, permanent, and tamper-proof.
Ah, so you can't easily delete data from a blockchain record.
Exactly. Reconciling that fundamental conflict, the right to be forgotten versus an unchangeable ledger, is a huge legal and technical challenge that hasn't really been solved yet.
The security questions around identity data, especially biometrics that you can't change, are just paramount.
Absolutely critical.
And we should definitely acknowledge resources like biometric.myprivacy.blog here. They do crucial work digging into these specific, complex security risks associated with biometric data.
Essential reading in this space.
So pulling this all together, it feels like a global race, doesn't it?
It really does. You've got this relentless drive for data extraction on one side, surveillance capitalism, the metaverse build-out, and on the other, you have these reactive, often fragmented, sometimes quite heavy-handed regulatory responses trying to catch up or control it.
Like the DSA, the AI Act, the U.S. state laws.
Exactly. And the fundamental tension underneath it all remains the same. It's a struggle between individual privacy and control versus expanding corporate and state power over our digital lives.
Okay, let me throw out one final, maybe provocative thought based on where this seems to be heading. Let's think beyond just controlling content or data use. What about controlling the answers?
What do you mean by answers?
Think about answer engine optimization, AEO. We all know SEO, search engine optimization. That gives you sources, links you can check, right?
Right. Multiple results, usually.
But AEO is different. It optimizes for the AI to give you one single answer, the definitive response.
Ah, like the snippets Google shows, but turbocharged by generative AI.
Exactly. And the danger there, I think, is really profound. When AI optimization replaces source verification, AEO doesn't just filter information, it starts to subtly shift what we even perceive as truth.
That's a powerful idea. It becomes a kind of censorship by design, happening silently in the background. The algorithm curates reality.
Right. It normalizes a version of truth that's been, as one source put it, pre-filtered in darkness.
And that plays right into the liar's dividend problem too, doesn't it? If AI can generate perfectly convincing fake text, images, video...
And bad actors can just dismiss real evidence as fake, and it becomes harder to tell the difference.
Yeah. When the answer engine smooths away the friction of debate, the need to check sources, the possibility of being wrong,
You end up with a system that can serve up a very comfortable, very optimized, but maybe fundamentally curated reality. And the big question left for all of us, for you listening, is who gets to decide what the optimal answer actually is?